believe that all started with 1944's Murder, My Sweet, based on the Raymond Chandler novel.
Now, this topic offers us a great opportunity to examine the history of noir voiceover in general, as it very much has its roots in the first person detective. Chandler's Marlowe novels were all written in first person, and Chandler introduced the world to his signature banter filled and analogy laden style in 1933 in pulp detective magazines like Black Mask and Dime Detective. Though he had different names, these were the earliest adventures of the iconic Los Angeles PI, Philip Marlowe. But while the mold was broken after the development of Philip Marlowe, fellow noir detective father Dashiell Hammett technically beat Chandler to the punch. In his 1929 novel, The Maltese Falcon, Hammett included a 4-page short story written in the first-person perspective of narrator Sam Spade. Hammett would go on to use the third person in future stories, including The Falcon, but this story was among the first to showcase the budding hard-boiled style that had begun in the 1920s and would develop through the 1950s in novels such as 1934's The Postman Always Rings Twice. On January 1st, 1939, however, the world was forever changed by the publication of Raymond Chandler's first full Marlowe novel, The Big Sleep. As the pillar of the style, it had immediate influence on the trajectory of Hollywood noir. In August 1940, the first true film noir, Stranger on the Third Floor, directed by Boris Inkster with cinematography provided by founding noir cinematographer Nicholas Musuraca, showcased the themes of crime, depravity, and guilt foundational to the genre. It also featured a noir voiceover, though it was still very much in the style of preceding Hollywood crime voiceovers, a kind of pensive, quiet internal monologue that conveyed doubt and fear, a very different voice from the exceptionally confident and sardonic detective Philip Marlowe. Hollywood's use of the noir voiceover continued to develop until it was perfected in 1944 with 3 back-to-back films. The first was released in July 1944, Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity. While not a Marlowe novel, was written by Raymond Chandler himself. The insurance salesman turned femme fatale victim narrates the film through a tape recording left for his boss. This framing device would be used on the 1946 radio series The Adventures of Sam Spade, who introduces each episode through an audio report of the case. In November 1944, Otto Preminger's Laura used a similar framing device, as the film is introduced through an epitaph for murder victim Laura Hunt, as written by her friend and biting newspaper columnist Waldo Lydecker. This matches the style of the novel, written by Vera Caspary, though the rest of the film does not follow her style of allowing other characters to speak in their own words. The use of it at the beginning of the film is what sets the noir tone, cementing it as a trope of the genre. Finally, after all of that development, Hollywood released the gold standard of film noir narration, Murder, My Sweet, the December 1944 adaptation of Raymond Chandler's second Philip Marlowe novel, Farewell, My Lovely, directed by Edward Dmytryk with a screenplay by John Paxton. In Murder, My Sweet, Raymond Chandler and Dmytryk both struggled with the casting of Dick Powell as the hard-boiled Marlowe, as he had spent the last 10 years doing light comedies and musicals as a crooner. He didn't seem to fit the hard masculinity of Marlowe, but as Powell wanted to do more dramatic pictures, having gone out for Fred MacMurray's role in Double Indemnity, studio head Charles Corner decided to let Powell try his hand at Marlowe, despite the objections of author and director. Powell would go on to shock everyone, with a performance that I consider the best depiction of Philip Marlowe on film. His lighter touch on the humor and banter brings forward the warm heart that beats in the hard chest of the acerbic detective. No matter how hard both Chandler and Marlowe try to prove that he's the toughest guy around, his first-person narration lays bare his own decency and sentimentalism. Philip Marlowe is a squared-away cat who just can't help being a sucker for the right reasons. So, the guy who sang Tiptoe Through the Tulips thus proved the ideal person to speak in Marlowe's voice, a voice that would become the gold standard for all future noir detective voiceovers, particularly those told in flashback, as Marlowe recounts the case to a crew of detectives in a chiaroscuro interrogation room. If you want to know more about this topic, let me know in the comments. Here's a clip from the movie.
Well, it was about 7 o'clock. Anyway, it was dark. What were you doing at the office that late? I'm a homing pigeon. I always come back to the stinking coop no matter how late it is. I've been out peeking under old Sunday sections for a barber named Dominic, whose wife wanted him back. I forget why. Only reason I took the job was because my bank account was trying to crawl under a duck. And I never found him. I just found out all over again how big this city is. My feet hurt, and my mind felt like a plumber's handkerchief. The office bottle hadn't sparked me up, so I'd taken out my little black book and decided to go grouse hunting. Nothing like soft shoulders to improve my morale. The soft shoulders had a date, but she thought she could do something about that. Was going to check right back. There's something about the dead silence of an office building at night. Not quite real. The traffic down below was something that didn't have anything to do with me.